After returning home from a 6-month business trip, I discovered my girlfriend had acquired a new dining companion. He acted more like the man of the house than I did, bustling about in the kitchen and attentively preparing a 3-course meal with soup. As we were about to sit down for dinner, he picked up the matching couple's bowls belonging to my girlfriend and me, giving me a challenging look. "Sorry, mate, we've only got one set of dishes here," he said. "I'll find you something else to eat from." Right in front of Thea, he served me a portion in a disposable plastic bowl. And when Thea Charlton didn't raise any objections to this treatment, I knew it was time to end our relationship. Ding! StoryShots reminds you to click the subscribe button at the bottom right corner to read the full novel. After 6 months away on business, the company's overseas operations had finally stabilized. I secretly bought a plane ticket, rushing home the day before Thea's birthday to surprise her. On the journey back, I excitedly imagined several possible reactions from Thea. Seeing me and the birthday gift I had carefully prepared for her, she would surely be both surprised and thrilled. The expression on her face would definitely be amusing. To capture this moment, I even brought a mini camera, just to be able to record this scene and keep it for future memories. I thought I had it all planned out, but I didn't expect my scheme to hit a snag right at the front door. 602. That's right, isn't it? I stepped back to check the flat number, feeling a bit confused. How come the electronic lock displayed input error twice when I entered the password? I clearly remembered that the password for the electronic lock was my birthday. Couldn't possibly be wrong. Refusing to give up, I entered my birthday once more. This time, I focused intently, pressing each number slowly and deliberately. After inputting the last digit, the electronic lock clicked and displayed locked, unable to unlock. If the password was incorrect, then Thea must have changed the electronic lock's code. I sighed, resigning myself to pressing the doorbell. After the second ring, a gruff male voice came from inside. "Just leave the parcel at the door." I was taken aback, stepping back again to double-check my flat number. It was definitely Block B, 602. I hadn't got the wrong place. This shoe rack was the one I bought, and on top of it were still the high heels I had bought for Thea. But why was there a man's voice coming from inside? A bad feeling suddenly welled up inside me, and I pressed the doorbell again. "I said leave the parcel at the door. Can't you understand English?" The door swung open abruptly, revealing a tall man with an annoyed expression. Florian stood there wearing a small dog-patterned apron, holding a spatula in his hand, glaring at me with obvious irritation. However, the moment Florian got a clear look at me, he gave me a once-over, his expression changing subtly, though his tone remained unfriendly. "Who are you looking for?" Without answering, I pushed past him into the flat, dragging my suitcase. "What are you doing? This is breaking and entering. I'll call the police." Florian angrily tried to pull me back. I surveyed the room's layout, then slowly turned my gaze to Florian, frowning as I asked, "That's what I should be asking you, isn't it? Who are you? Why are you in my home? Where's Thea?" Just as Silas and Florian were at an impasse, Thea's voice came from the doorway. "Silly dog. I've bought that brand of coconut water you wanted." Thea was changing her shoes at the entrance. "I had to go to several supermarkets to find this brand. You'd better thank me properly later and give me a good leg massage, you hear?" Thea called out twice, but when Florian didn't reply, she instinctively looked up and suddenly met my gaze. In that instant, the color visibly drained from Thea's face. "Silas, you're back?" After saying this, Thea quickly walked towards me. Florian paused for a moment, no longer confronting me. He walked to Thea's side and naturally took the things from her hands, placing them on the table. Thea put on a bright smile and quickly stepped in front of me, giving me a big hug with undisguised excitement. "You came back so suddenly? Why didn't you tell me? I could have prepared," Thea said with a hint of complaint, hugging me tightly, but I had no desire to hug her back. I only felt that this girlfriend of 5 years standing before me seemed somewhat unfamiliar. Who is he? I've never liked beating around the bush, so I asked directly what was on my mind. Him. Thea looked at me with displeasure. You've forgotten again, haven't you? I've told you about him before. He's the healthy meal service I found in our neighborhood. My dining companion. Why do you always forget what I tell you? Really? I frowned, thinking hard before recalling that Thea had indeed mentioned this to me. Because Thea works as an entertainment streamer, she often eats at irregular times. I was going to be away on business for nearly half a year, and out of concern for her health, I often ordered takeaways for her while I was away. However, I usually ordered healthy salads and homestyle meals, which Thea got tired of after just a week. Then she found someone in the neighborhood who provides a meal service, costing £150 a month, with someone specifically taking care of her 3 meals a day, ensuring clean and healthy food. When she told me about this, I wholeheartedly approved and even transferred her £1,000, telling her to order the most expensive meals and not to skimp on herself. Thea had cheerfully agreed and accepted the money. She had indeed mentioned this to me, but I hadn't realized their service apparently included a man coming to cook at home. It wasn't like that before, Thea hurriedly explained, seeing my displeased expression. It's just that later there were very few people ordering the meal service, and in the end, I was the only one left. So Florian simply started coming to the house to cook for me directly. As she spoke, Florian placed the prepared dishes on the table. He wiped his hands on his apron and chimed in with a smile. That's right, mate. You should try my cooking. Yes, come on. Sit down and have a taste. Florian's cooking is really excellent. It's delicious, Thea said excitedly, swallowing as she mentioned it, and pulled out a chair for me to sit down. I had barely sat down when I heard Florian instructing Thea, "Don't just sit there like a lump. Get our guests some lemonade." "Oh, right, of course." Thea seemed to snap out of a daze and scurried off to find a glass and pour the drink. She had just picked up a blue mug from the table when Florian couldn't help but call out, "You daft cow. Don't use that one. That's my mug." Thea realized her mistake and put it down sheepishly, then went to look for another glass. As she searched fruitlessly, Florian chuckled and said, "You're hopeless," before reaching into a nearby cupboard and pulling out a clean glass tumbler. Thea scratched her head, not seeming bothered by his teasing. The two of them moved about, one dishing up food in the kitchen, the other pouring lemonade for me. I sat silently in my chair, watching their intimate and synchronized movements. For a moment, I felt as if they were the loving owners of this home, and I was merely a guest, a rather unfamiliar guest at that. Then Thea placed the glass of lemonade in front of me. She kissed my cheek quite naturally and leaned in with a smile, asking, "Why the long face, love?" It was only when Thea called me love that I finally snapped back to reality. Oh, that's right. Thea is my girlfriend. We're the ones who are actually the couple in this home. I had just lifted my gaze to speak to Thea when there was a sudden crash from the kitchen, followed by Florian's startled exclamation. Before I could get a word out, Thea had already rushed anxiously towards the kitchen. I didn't look in that direction, but I could hear Thea and Florian's voices drifting out. "Oh no, you clumsy oaf. Did you hurt your hand? Let me see." "It's nothing." Florian's voice held a hint of amusement. "I'm a big lad. I can take a few knocks." "Oh please. Last time you got a tiny cut. You came crying to me about it." Their voices grew quieter after that, as if they were whispering about something, punctuated by occasional laughter. I closed my eyes, unable to make out what they were saying, and not really wanting to hear it anyway. The kitchen was quickly tidied up. Thea Charlton and Florian Ainsworth each carried a bowl of food out. 2 bowls, one with a cat print and the other with a dog print. One was placed in front of Thea, the other in front of Florian. As they sat down naturally, Florian seemed to suddenly remember something and slapped the table. "Oh no. I forgot we only have 2 bowls left. Mate, I'll find another bowl for you to put your food in." With that, Florian quickly ran back to the kitchen, and soon returned with a disposable plastic bowl filled to the brim with food. He placed the food in front of me, his face wearing a thick layer of provocation. I stared at him silently, watching as he sat down and curved his lips slightly mockingly, making no effort to hide his contempt for me. On the other side, Thea was completely oblivious to the tension. She ignored the plastic bowl and cutlery in front of me and eagerly picked up a chicken wing with her chopsticks and started eating. As she ate, Thea urged me, "It's really delicious, you should try it." "Yeah." Florian immediately chimed in, looking at me with a smirk. "Make yourself at home. Don't be shy with me." I listened to Florian's host-like remarks and suddenly found it amusing, but in a bitter way. What I found even more ironic was that Thea had no reaction to this. She seemed to subconsciously feel that it was okay for Florian to say these things. So Thea didn't say anything, nor did she notice what kind of provocation I was enduring. This realization truly made my heart sink to the bottom. At the same time, Florian let out a strange cry of "ah," and then slapped his forehead, laughing. "I forgot to take off the apron." After saying this, he untied the apron and then took off his shirt, throwing it in front of Thea, saying, "It's so hot. Can you put this aside for me?" Thea took it without any surprise and simply placed the shirt to the side. My mind was buzzing, and for a moment I was completely stunned. It was at this moment that Florian gave me a challenging look, and Thea said, "Silly pig, help me get a chicken wing. It's too far for me to reach." "Sure." Thea responded to Florian's command with an action, instinctively moving to get a chicken wing for him. It's hard for me to describe my feelings at this moment. I only knew that if I endured this any longer, I would be the kind of pushover who wears a green hat, gets breast nodules, and would be laughed at for a lifetime. So when Thea picked up the chicken wing and was about to deliver it to Florian's plate, I suddenly stood up and forcefully swept all the dishes on the table onto the floor. In an instant, all the dishes were pushed off the table, crashing to the ground. The hot soup splashed everywhere, much of it landing on Florian. Florian's bare upper body was scalded by the hot soup, causing him to let out a scream, his face instantly turning dark. "Mate, I don't know what you're angry about, but I do know that no matter how angry you are, you shouldn't take it out on the food," he said. "Silas Brooke." Thea also got angry, shouting my name in dissatisfaction. "What's wrong with you? I really didn't want to say anything to you today." Thea irritably slammed the chopsticks in her hand onto the table. "You've had a sour face since you came back, and now you're pulling this stunt. What exactly do you want? Apologize to Florian right now." I laughed bitterly at Thea's words and asked back, "You want me to apologize?" "Yes," Thea answered firmly, with an indisputable tone. The next second, I grabbed Thea with all my strength and pushed her towards Florian. "Apologize, right?" I said, taking advantage of the moment before either of them could react, pressing her head towards Florian's bare upper body. "Before you apologize, shouldn't you explain something to me? Why is it that when he comes here to cook for you, you have no reaction at all to him not wearing a shirt?" Thea's face instantly turned pale when she saw the scene before her eyes. "No, it's not what you think." Thea Charlton suddenly panicked. She glanced at Florian Ainsworth's body once more. After seeing the view beneath him, she even unconsciously swallowed. When Thea realized what she had done, she quickly looked up at me. Upon meeting my half-smiling expression, she became flustered and hurriedly stammered an explanation. "It's not like that, darling. Listen to me. He's just the cook, and I'm just here to eat. He felt hot, so he took off his shirt. That's normal, isn't it?" "Exactly," Florian chimed in righteously. "Don't you take off your clothes when you're hot?" I couldn't help but laugh in disbelief. Sure, if I were in my own home, I'd strip if I wanted to. But the problem now was, is this Florian's house? Is Thea his girlfriend? How dare he act like this? Does he think I'm an idiot? Thea, completely oblivious to the situation, went along with Florian's words. "That's right, darling. Florian and I are just friends, purely platonic. A man and woman alone together, the man half naked, and the woman showing no embarrassment or surprise. And she expects me to believe this is just friendship? She might say it, but I certainly don't believe it." I expressionlessly pushed away her hand that was grabbing me, without any response. Thea was truly anxious now. We've been together for over 5 years. You may not understand others, but don't you understand me? I'm so innocent the first can't even find fit blokes on TikTok. Silas Brooke, why don't you trust me? Thea was furious and pointed her finger at my nose. Do you really think I'm the kind of woman who would cheat on you with another man? I couldn't be bothered to say more to this fool. I turned my gaze directly to Florian. This man who, since I entered, had been constantly provoking me, even daring to assert his dominance in my own home. Florian looked at me with a cold smirk. Mate, Thea and I have nothing to hide. I don't want to explain anything. I just know that people with dirty minds see everything as dirty. Florian deliberately emphasized the last sentence, with a strong hint of provocation. I had no intention of humoring him and directly retorted. So, did I help you take off your clothes? Did I force you to cook for my girlfriend in this state? By your logic, next time I open the door and see you two naked in bed, you'll tell me I have a dirty mind, and you were just lying there talking. I stood up, looking down at Florian. Do you even believe the words coming out of your mouth? Florian was left speechless by my retort, his face turning a mix of white and purple like an overturned palette. He probably hadn't expected me to so directly expose his little tricks, mercilessly hitting his weak spot, making him look like a clown at this moment. Florian clenched his fists, meeting my gaze, and replied through gritted teeth. I can tell you very clearly that Gilbert and I are absolutely not as filthy as you think. I'm dressed like this simply because I was hot. The moment Florian finished speaking, I suddenly raised my hand and punched him squarely in the face. Florian tried to fight back, but after a few more punches from me, he was left defenseless. Seeing he couldn't beat me, he shoved Thea towards me and then turned and ran out. The front door slammed shut behind him, while Thea stared at his retreating figure for quite a while. After a long moment, I heard her say to me in a very disappointed tone, "He just took off his shirt because he was hot. Is that such a crime in your eyes?" My head buzzed, and I looked up at her in disbelief. Thea, however, seemed to have understood something, frowning as she met my gaze. Silas Brooke, in the end, it's because you don't trust me. We've been together for 5 years. Don't you know what kind of person I am? Doesn't your conscience hurt when you slander me and Florian like this? I don't know if my conscience hurts or not. All I know is that right now, my head is throbbing with anger, especially when I see Thea's clear yet foolish eyes. I'm literally shaking with rage. Afraid I wasn't angry enough, Thea deliberately added another sentence. Later, I'll take you to apologize to him. You must go. Otherwise, I won't forgive you. At that moment, all the strength left my body. I silently picked up the bowl of food still left on the table. Thea frowned, her mouth slightly open, seemingly wanting to say more. The next second, I smashed the entire plate of food directly into her face. Thea Charlton, let's break up. Being with you has become a stain on my life. Silas Brooke, have you gone mad? Thea Charlton shouted, sounding even more aggrieved than I was. I don't agree with this. Did you take the wrong medication today? You come home and start causing all sorts of trouble, turning the house upside down. You couldn't have. Thea furrowed her brow, looking me up and down as if she'd suddenly realized something. You couldn't have found someone else outside and are now trying to pin this on me, using these tactics to force me to break up with you. Thea's eyes widened as she spoke, becoming more convinced of her theory with each word. She kept staring at my face, watching for any reaction. Seeing my expression contort in disbelief only seemed to confirm her suspicions further. You really do have someone else. Thea shouted loud enough to shake the walls, her eyes instantly brimming with angry tears. Silas Brooke, how could you do this to me? As she said this, I was momentarily stunned, wondering if Thea had genuinely lost her mind. One sentence, riddled with 3 glaring logical fallacies. Shifting the topic, false attribution, and concept swapping. We had just been discussing Florian Ainsworth and her relationship. Not only did she offer no explanation or response, but she also abruptly blurted out that I had found someone else. Clearly, she was blurring her own ambiguous behavior with Florian while simultaneously shifting the focus onto me. She assumed that I had found someone else, which was why I came home causing trouble, wanting to break up with her, using this subjective speculation to swap concepts, directly transforming my reasonable questioning into unreasonable troublemaking. Having sorted out the logical relationships, my mind suddenly cleared. That overwhelming emotion of anger and betrayal gradually receded. I quietly looked at the woman before me, this Thea Charlton I had been dating for nearly 5 years. I didn't know when she had become like this. Was that gentle and sweet girl in my memories only so radiant because of the rose-tinted glasses I wore? I wasn't sure. I only knew that I no longer wanted to continue loving the Thea Charlton standing before me now. Thea stiffened under my gaze, her whole body seeming uncomfortable. She asked dryly, "Why are you looking at me like that? You're the one who's done something to feel guilty about, not me." "Are you sure?" I asked calmly. "Do you dare to swap phones with me for inspection?" Thea was startled by my emotionless tone. Her gaze involuntarily swept over the bowl I had just thrown at her face, which had now landed back in her hands, before quickly averting her eyes guiltily. This bowl had a puppy pattern printed on it, matching the one with a kitten pattern that Florian had. It was clearly a set. Moreover, judging by the rough quality of this bowl, I could deduce that it wasn't bought by Thea, but rather a pair of handmade bowls. Thinking of this, I suddenly remembered that about a month ago, Thea had apparently visited the University of Stoke-on-Trent. She told me she was going to attend an event. It seems she wasn't alone on that trip. Without looking at Thea, I simply tugged at the corner of my mouth and asked, "So you two went on a trip together, did you?" The next second, I heard the crisp sound of a bowl shattering on the floor. I didn't even need to look up at Thea to know how panicked her expression must be right now. "We didn't go together, we were just—" Thea Charlton was about to make excuses, but I didn't want to hear it. I cut her off abruptly. "No need to explain. I don't really care where you went or what you did. I also didn't care about how they got together." I didn't want to hear any more explanations from Thea. From the moment I walked in, Florian Ainsworth had shoved all the evidence right in my face. The blatant couple's bowls and cutlery, the matching mugs, and their intimate nicknames and gestures that no longer made them nauseous. Plus all the traces of Florian left around my house. Everything was telling me that my home had been invaded, and Thea had allowed it. Whether she cheated or not, I only had one crystal clear thought in my mind now. Break up, right this instant. I had my speech prepared in my head and asked directly, "The door lock password has been changed, hasn't it?" Thea was taken aback, not expecting me to change the subject so quickly. She frowned, taking a while to remember. "I think so. Florian always forgot the password when he came to cook, and I couldn't hear him when I was streaming with my headphones on. He often had to wait outside for an hour or two, so we just changed it to a password he could remember. The current password is 990817. I listened silently to Thea's words. I rolled the numbers 990,817 around in my mouth a couple of times. It wasn't Thea's birthday, nor was it our anniversary. I didn't even need to use my brain, just my toes to guess that this string of numbers was Florian's birthday. I thought I could maintain a calm attitude and not get angry about this mess anymore. But when Thea said those words, a surge of anger suddenly flared up in my heart. I swung my arm with full force, my palm whistling through the air towards Thea's face. Thea was frightened, her body stiff, not daring to move, and she closed her eyes. But the expected sting didn't come. Thea couldn't help but peek with one eye, only to see my hand slowly lowering in front of her cheek. She immediately relaxed, a smile instantly appearing on her face. She hadn't even finished saying, "I knew you wouldn't hit me," with a giggle. The next moment, my newly prepared slap flew across her face, sending her stumbling. "Thea Charlton, this is my house. I bought it outright." I met Thea's shocked gaze and said to her word by word, You have no right to make any changes to my house, including my door lock. Thea clutched her face in pain, opened and closed her mouth, seemingly wanting to explain something. But after opening her mouth for a long time, those words of explanation remained stuck in her throat, unable to utter a single word. I've only been gone for half a year, and I didn't expect so much rubbish to accumulate in the house. As I spoke, I stood up, picked up the mug Florian had left on the table, and then noticed Thea's pink mug in the corner. I picked it up and examined it carefully for a moment. Then I let go in midair, watching the mug shatter on the floor before saying leisurely, "Oops, I lost my grip." Looking around the living room, everything I saw was in a style I neither recognized nor liked. Gray curtains, gray sofa fabric, 2 green dinosaur cushions on the sofa, and a large box of building blocks placed next to it in complete disarray. The black peach wood TV cabinet I had specifically bought in Chinese style had been painted gray at some point. When I saw that cheap and ugly color, I almost lost my breath. I strode quickly towards the bedroom, pushed open the door, and upon seeing the unfamiliar bedding set, I couldn't help but sneer. Thea followed closely behind me, and when she heard my sneer and saw the bedding set I was looking at, her face turned bright red. She hurriedly explained, "It's not what you think. He accidentally vomited all over the bed last time when he got drunk after we broke up, and he felt so guilty that he insisted on buying me a new bedding set. I was too lazy to change it before, but if you don't like it, I'll buy a new one and change it right away." Thea hurriedly opened her phone to buy a new bedding set. I took a few photos of the bedroom and then stopped her. "Wait a moment. I'll call a lawyer friend and an accountant to come over and estimate the total financial loss to my house." Thea's hand holding the phone paused, and she looked up at me in disbelief, asking, "What do you mean? Is it that hard to understand?" I frowned, looking at Thea. "You don't think that you and Florian can turn my house into this state and get away with just a flimsy sorry, do you?" "Thea Charlton, I'm not running a charity here." With that, I walked past her to check the study, leaving Thea standing there alone, her eyes filled with confusion. The 2 friends I invited were incredibly helpful. In just over an hour, they quickly estimated my losses based on my description and the invoices and receipts from my previous large purchases. "The total comes to £27,800, one of them announced. I laid out the itemized list in front of Thea Charlton, showing her the photos I had just taken. "The major items are my custom-made kitchen refrigerator and cabinets, the living room TV stand, and the decorative tiles in the balcony and bathroom. All of these have been changed without my consent, and I want to replace them all. Then there's my study, where I've been collecting for years." "Enough!" Thea interrupted me before I could finish. She stared at me intently, as if I were some kind of monster. "Florian had my permission to make these changes." Thea's gaze slid over my 2 friends, and she pursed her lips. "You don't need to make such a fuss over these little things. I'll just ask him to come over and apologize to you." Thea was about to message Florian when I tapped on the table, gesturing for her to look at me. "It's not just about him paying," I said, pointing to the printed content on the table, revealing Thea's name after Florian's. "You need to compensate me together." Thea was clearly stunned. She looked at me in disbelief and exclaimed, "Silas Brooke, I'm your girlfriend. How can you be so heartless? Is this all because I got a bit closer to another guy?" I immediately took the extra glass of cold water I had prepared on the table and splashed it in Thea's face. "If you can't understand simple English, go to the hospital." I raised my voice. "We've already broken up. Please stop dragging this into a relationship issue. You colluded with someone else to cause significant property damage to me. If you're not willing to compensate, we'll settle this at the police station." Thea's face darkened, and she shouted my name, "Silas Brooke." In the past, if I had seen her angry like this, I would have done everything to comfort her and make her happy. But now I couldn't even bear to look at her. I didn't waste any more words with her and directly opened my phone to dial the police. The moment the call connected, Thea lunged forward and hung up my phone. Fine. Thea was shaking with anger. You really want to make it like this, don't you? All right, we'll break up if that's what you want. Don't regret it. I let out a deep sigh, feeling a headache coming on. When would she finally move past the nonsense about breaking up and cheating? The core issue right now was that my property had suffered enormous damage. 27,800 pounds. A full 27,800 pounds. Was it so insignificant compared to her feelings? As Thea was defiantly dragging her suitcase to leave, I called out to stop her. Thea immediately smiled, turning back with a hint of smugness to ask, "What? You still can't bear to let me go? If you apologize to me now, I might be merciful enough to forgive you and not break up with you." I looked at her as if she were an idiot. "No, I just wanted you to send me Florian's contact details before you leave. Given the state of the flat, neither of you is getting away with this. I need to send him the list of damaged items." Thea's face fell instantly. After sending me Florian's contact information, she left without looking back. Just before I closed the door, I suddenly heard a heart-wrenching cry from outside. But that was no longer my concern. All I wanted now was compensation. I wanted to restore my flat to its original state. I created a group chat with Thea Charlton and Florian Ainsworth. The group name was simply Compensation Group. Thea was the first to pop up with a question, "Love Group?" I glanced at it, not even bothering to answer. How tacky. Fortunately, Thea quickly deleted that message a second later. I mentioned both Thea and Florian, then posted the compensation list in the group. I left a message, "Please transfer the compensation amount to me within 10 days. Then I muted the group. How much each of them would pay and how they'd sort it out between themselves was no longer my concern. I spent an entire day clearing out all the extra rubbish that had accumulated in my flat, throwing it all in the bin. Without all that grimy, dark junk, my place finally started to look a bit more like it used to. The next day, I changed the locks and installed security cameras at the front door and inside the flat. On the third day, I hired a cleaning team to give my place a thorough top-to-bottom clean. While cleaning the bedroom, they found a pair of men's thongs under the bed and asked if I wanted to keep them. I was disgusted and almost told them to bin it straight away, but after a moment's thought, I said, "Hold on to that for now." I took a photo of the underwear and posted it in the compensation group, mentioning Florian. "Hello? Are these your pants?" Florian couldn't help but respond, sending a voice message. "Yeah, they're mine. What about it?" I raised an eyebrow and calmly replied, "That's good then. I found them under the bed. Since you two slept in my bed, I don't want it anymore. I'll be adding the cost of the mattress and the solid wood bed frame to the compensation list, totaling 4,600 pounds. The group went quiet for a minute. Then Florian suddenly sent over a dozen 60-second voice messages. I smirked but didn't bother listening to them. Instead, I posted the legal clauses my lawyer friend had prepared for me. Florian, who had been full of fight just moments ago, suddenly went quiet. After a while, I saw Thea post, "Silas, do you really have to take it this far?" I sent a message to the group stating that the crime of intentional property damage carries a sentence of 3 to 7 years in prison. Thea immediately fell silent as well. The group remained unusually quiet, with no one saying anything more, until the 8th day, when an exhausted-looking Thea brought Florian to my front door. Thea, out of habit, tried to enter the passcode to come in directly, but after 3 attempts, each time showing the wrong password, she finally realized and called me. Her first words were, "You changed the locks? And the passcode? I tried your birthday, it didn't work. I tried my birthday, it didn't work. I even tried our anniversary date, and that didn't work either." Thea's voice was shaking, as if she might faint at any moment. "Silas, do you really not love me anymore? We've known each other for almost 10 years, and we were together for 5. Puzzled, I asked from the other end of the phone, "Are you suggesting I should ask for emotional damages as well?" The next second, Thea hung up the call. I opened the security camera feed for my front door and saw Thea staring at my door, her expression shattered. Florian held her comfortingly, burying her face in his chest. The two of them were locked in a tight embrace right outside my front door. Their eyes met, and they couldn't help but kiss passionately once more. As I watched their hands starting to wander beneath each other's clothes, it seemed they were about to do something rather indecent right on my doorstep. I cleared my throat, preparing myself, then activated the intercom feature of my security system and called out to them, "Shall I fetch you a bed, perhaps?" My voice startled them both. Thea, in particular, panicked and shoved Florian away forcefully, causing him to stumble backwards several steps before landing unceremoniously on his backside. Thea glanced hurriedly at the camera, then ran off without looking back. Florian was left alone, rubbing his sore bottom as he sat on the ground. After a moment, he got up and chased after her. What a spectacle! I uploaded the recorded video to our group chat, adding a comment. "If you must love, love deeply, but please don't do it on my doorstep, or I'll have to call the police. You wouldn't want me to add a new door to the list of damages you owe me, would you?" Thea and Florian didn't respond, but I knew they had both seen it. They were probably watching that video clip over and over again. I didn't care what they were thinking, though, because the 10-day deadline I'd given them was almost up. All I cared about was getting my money. Thea Charlton was not a woman of means. She claimed to be a content creator, but in reality it was just a fancy way of saying she was unemployed and living at home. She never took her content creation seriously, lacking even the most basic equipment for streaming. The idea of making a living from it was far from her mind. Throughout our years together, I willingly supported her financially. She used my secondary credit card for shopping and topping up her gaming accounts. After our breakup, I immediately canceled her card access. I was certain that her bank balance wouldn't exceed £500. As for Florian Ainsworth, with his cheap taste and apparent lack of discernment, I doubted he had much money either. So, I was quite curious to see how these two would manage to scrape together over £30,000 for me. To my surprise, not only did they gather the sum, but they also withdrew it all in cash, bringing it to me in a briefcase with an air of triumph. When we met, Thea immediately tried to throw the money in my face. "Silas Brooke, isn't this what you wanted? Here, take it." I caught the cash she threw, verified its authenticity, and raised an eyebrow in surprise. Thea reached for another wad to throw at me, but before she could, I snatched the briefcase away. "That's enough of the theatrics. Let's go to the bank and verify this," I said, denying Thea the satisfaction of pelting me with cash. She nearly choked on her anger. On the way to the bank, Thea and Florian were holding hands, constantly cuddling and kissing. Thea kept stealing glances at me, hoping to see jealousy or displeasure on my face. My eyes were only on the money. I didn't spare them a single glance. After confirming the amount and depositing it, I finally let out a long sigh of relief. This troublesome matter was finally resolved. As I turned to leave, Thea suddenly grabbed my arm. I frowned and looked back at her. Thea's lips quivered, but no words came out for a while. Just as I was about to lose patience, I heard Thea say in a trembling voice, "From now on, may our paths diverge, and may we each find our own way. You know, you'll never find another woman as good as me." Even at this point, she was still trying to act sentimental. Who was she trying to impress? I slowly pried her fingers off my arm and said with a smile to both Thea and Florian, "Well then, I wish you both a lifetime of happiness and many children." With that, I shook them off, blocked and deleted their contacts, went home to pack my things, put the house up for sale, and once again boarded a plane to leave the country. The second month after the house was sold, Thea went there late one night and somehow got into a fight with the new owner. They ended up at the police station, with Thea threatening self-harm and demanding to see me. The current owner contacted me through the estate agent, and only then did I learn that the money Thea had given me was borrowed from various sources. She hadn't just borrowed £32,000 to repay me. She had borrowed a full £50,000, and after paying me back, she used the rest to travel and shop with Florian. The two of them had their fun, but when it came time to repay the loans, they were at a loss. Thea, having no money, asked Florian to help repay some of it. Florian readily agreed. But the next morning, Thea woke to find Florian gone. Along with him disappeared Thea's mobile phone, laptop, and the few £100 she had left. With nowhere else to turn, Thea thought of me again. She wanted to come and ask for my forgiveness, but when she saw another woman in my former house, she lost her temper and started a fight, which led to the police involvement. At the police station, Thea insisted she was my fiancée and demanded to see me. Now, the estate agent was cautiously asking me, "Sir, she insists on speaking with you. What should we do about this?" While handling work emails, I replied without hesitation, "Ignore her. I don't know her. Let the law take its course. Let her face the consequences." After hanging up, the estate agent sent me a video of Thea lying on the ground, crying hysterically. I didn't bother to watch it or reply. This was all her choice. She had no one else to blame. If it weren't for my desire to avoid her entanglements, I might have wanted to congratulate her in person. The end.